People across our region are taking to the streets. They want their voices heard, saying they're standing up to racial injustice.
It is appalling that people have to turn to violence in order to get their point across.
In one hometown, cleanup is underway after protests got violent. Broken glass littered the streets, and now leaders have a message to those responsible.
I say to you that you have done nothing to advance the cause of equality.
This special edition of WDBJ 7 at 6 begins right now.
Thank you for joining us this evening. We appreciate that very much. I'm Robin Reed.
And I'm Jean Jadhan. Our top story, a local state of emergency has been declared in Lynchburg after protests turned violent. Police officers were hurt and windows at 5th and Federal Station and the Adams Motor Company were smashed. Leaders there have said there is a voluntary curfew starting in just 2 hours. Meanwhile, people across our hometowns from Danville to Blacksburg hit the streets protesting police brutality in the wake of George Floyd's death. We have team coverage tonight. We begin with Logan Sherrill first, who is outside of 5th and Federal, a restaurant in Lynchburg. Logan.
Good evening, Jean. Yes, we are here in the roundabout of 5th and Federal. Just over my shoulder is the restaurant, and they are continuing to put the pieces back together after peaceful protests yesterday here in Lynchburg turned rather violent and pretty scary for a lot of folks. Protesters were angry. They started throwing rocks and bricks through these windows, smashing up most of the windows, and the owners and folks here at 5th and Federal have been putting some boards up on the windows and what's left of them throughout the afternoon, and will do most likely the same throughout the rest of the evening. What is this all stemming from? Well, last week, Jerry Falwell Jr., the president of Liberty University, he tweeted out that he was going to have some face masks due to the governor's mandate, and well, he was going to put the Governor Northam's the blackface photo there in his yearbook on those masks. And then that prompted the 5th and Federal owner and 5th and Federal to tweet out, well, if you have any extra masks, we'd like to have some. And then that's what led to the peaceful protest and then the violent protest last night. About an hour ago or so, we were able to speak with one of the community leaders here, one of the community advocates, one of the pastors in town, James Cam. He's the leader of One Voice, One Community, One Voice here in town. And it's a partnership between a lot of faith leaders and with the police, really to bridge that gap and to start those conversations. And through all this cleanup here at 5th and Federal, he wanted to have this message to those protesters who want to continue to protest throughout the evening.
Continue to exercise their right, but do it the correct way. And if there's people that's breaking windows, take pictures of them and report them, and be correct. If it's illegal to be there and you're trespassing, do not go.
And the owner of 5th and Federal, Josh Reed, he was able to speak with our WDBJ7's Katie Reshetko this morning, kind of giving his side of the story. And he said, look, I didn't mean and didn't intend for any racism, but he understands how people could see it that way. And a lot of folks, in fact, did see it that way, and they expressed their displeasure and their concerns very vocally last night. I know that, Jean, we've been seeing a lot of state police here in the last few minutes. It appears that they are staging an area a few hundred yards down the street here at 5th and Federal. We're not sure of anything that could be going on. I would think it's just, out of precautionary measures,
right,
to make sure that what happened last night does not happen again tonight.
That would make perfect sense because, Logan, it seems like when the sun goes down and the later we get into the evening is when more of the violence tends to happen. All right, Logan Sherrill in Lynchburg, thank you very much. Meanwhile, people in Lynchburg, as Logan just mentioned, you're going to notice more police on the streets. Today, Chief Ryan Zudema said the increase in enforcement would last for the foreseeable future. Mayor Trini Tweedy expressed her empathy for those protesting and to the officers.
We are at an unprecedented time in our era of living. And I don't know any community that has the playbook for that has the rules all in place for what we are seeing now.
Mayor Tweedy said it was everyone's responsibility to make sure the community moves forward in a good direction. To Danville now, where a protest is ongoing. WDBJ7's Ashley Bowles is live there. Ashley, we know folks were marching down the street toward the police station. What is going on there now?
Yeah, well, again, Jean, it's peaceful so far with folks marching. They're actually taking an even bigger loop now than just the municipal building, but there's even a bigger showing of Danville police officers that are surrounding the building, which is where the police department is. It's actually in the basement of this building. As you can see, there's a little bit of a crowd gathered just in front of me here. This is part of some of the protesters that have taken off and have been on the move. And we want to show you now what things looked like a little bit earlier this afternoon, starting with one of the most powerful images we have observed all day long. This is 18-year-old Deja Swift, and she's hugging Chief Scott Booth. Chief Scott Booth actually got a little bit emotional after that hug. He said that that's the reason he was out there, was to support everyone. You can hear some of the chanting that took place, the marching down Martin Luther King Jr. Bridge, and then along Riverside Drive and back to the bridge in front of the fountains. And Chief Booth talked to us privately, telling us a little bit about not only why he was out there, but what he was hoping to get out and the message he was hoping to send to the folks that were out there.
Never been arresting people. It's protecting the sanctity of life. It's saving people. Whether it's somebody that's been hurt in a community, us coming through and solving a problem that's going to hopefully save their life or save their community, or making sure when we do have to take somebody into custody, something like the horrific event that we witnessed on that video doesn't happen. We have to understand that it's not about us versus them. We're in this together.
And to our knowledge, there is no plan in place for these protesters right now as to where they're marching or for how long they will be out here. Jean, we've been in communication with the organizer, again, a different group than who was organizing earlier today. We're going to keep following the protesters the best we can. Police department has told us they will continue to have officers staffed out just in case things turn from peaceful to violent, which they are hoping does not happen.
All right, Ashley, and that image, that video of the 18-year-old woman hugging the police chief, just very telling of what a lot of people are feeling who are trying to be peaceful throughout the demonstrations. Ashley Bowles in Danville, thank you. Meanwhile, Roanoke's police chief told us today he wants to work with the community to ensure successful protests after this weekend. Chief Roman said in a Sunday press conference he supports peaceful gatherings. Right now, he says his main concern is for the safety of the public and for his officers. The chief saying he told his officers they are in a better position to serve when they're able to put themselves in the mindset of the community and listen to people's frustrations.
And so I ask my officers to understand that a lot of the derogatory statements and things that are being made toward them is not necessarily toward them and us personally as a police department, but an institution of police, and that's understandable.
Chief Roman says he'd like for people interested in protesting to call him so they can work together to ensure a safe and successful demonstration. In Blacksburg, crowds of people stopped traffic as they marched through the city and Virginia Tech's campus. WDBJ7's Kate Capodanno followed them as they rallied and is live now there. Kate, what was the message from the protesters there? Is it mirroring what we're hearing in other communities?
It appears to be so, Jean. It was an emotional but peaceful afternoon here in Blacksburg. Hundreds of protesters weaved through the streets, ending up here at the police department. They all had that same message. They want to see change. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Sounds of solidarity. No justice. No peace. Rang through the streets of Blacksburg Monday afternoon.
We are all the same, and if we unite together, we can find justice.
Hundreds in this hometown marched in protest after George Floyd died in police custody last week in Minneapolis.
To me, this is personal because George Floyd could have been my half-brother. You know, any one of these African Americans that have been killed could have been my cousin, my half-brother, my half-sister, my nieces, my nephew, and I'm doing this for them.
The demonstrators snaked through the neighborhood and onto Virginia Tech's campus, pausing outside the Blacksburg Police Department in the beginning and again at the end of the rally. Their shouts echoing the same outrage and frustrations, demanding change and justice.
And this is what needs to happen. We need to come together. We need to voice our opinion. We need to show that we have a voice. We need to show these people that we're not scared, that we know what's going on. We know what that they're doing to us and that we're not scared. We're not going to back down until something happens.
It was an emotional display.
Make it known that Black Lives Matter. Make it known that.
At one point, the crowd growing silent and dropping to a knee as a way to honor those killed and recognize the work that still needs to be done. The conversation continues here in Blacksburg. Local leaders are expected to talk to the community about the outrage so many people are feeling. And Jean, that conversation is expected to take place right here outside the police department tomorrow at 1 o'clock.
All right, Kate Capodanno in Blacksburg, thank you.
Coming up next, after the break, we have a look at the latest data on the coronavirus here in Virginia. Stay with us. In Martinsville, dozens of protesters met along Greensboro Road for a peaceful demonstration. The protest was organized by high schools who wanted to remember George Floyd. They all took a knee for 9 minutes and were joined by both Henry County and Martinsville sheriffs. Both said they wanted to show their support in people's rights to demonstrate peacefully and to protect the protesters.
We joined in with their activities just a few minutes ago. It's a good group. They're just expressing their rights, and that's what we wanted to show them support and also make sure that we just have a safe event.
Today was the second day of a peaceful protest in Martinsville. An update now on COVID-19 in our hometowns. Cases continue to slowly increase. With 21 new cases reported overnight, the total is nearing 1,400 in our region. No new deaths have been reported in the last few days. In all, 40 people from our area have died. Across the state, there are more than 45,000 cases and 1,300 deaths.
Chief Meteorologist Brent Watts will have a look at your hometown forecast right after this.
Now from the Berglund Automotive Weather Center, here's your hometown forecast.
Well, the weather is quite locally, so we'll start you out where things are quite active down in the tropics. This is a new tropical depression that formed. It was actually over in the Pacific, went over the Bay of Campeche, and then is now in the southern Gulf. And we are expecting this to strengthen a little more over the next couple of days, likely becoming Cristobal. But look at where it goes. It just kind of stalls out there in the Gulf of Mexico and the southern Gulf. But by the time we get into Friday and Saturday, it eventually starts lifting northward in toward the Gulf Coast states. So this thing is no harm to us whatsoever, at least for the time being, until we get to late in the week and perhaps the weekend where it may approach the Gulf Coast states. But I show you that because that's something we'll be watching as the week goes on. Our weather dominated by this big area of high pressure. That's keeping us very dry. Skies clear over the past couple days, and those temperatures on the comfortable side, lower humidity. Skies still looking pretty good tonight to see the space station. It's visible at 9:52. You can wave at the new astronauts that are on board the space station that, of course, made it into space this past weekend. That's going to be visible at 9:52 for about 3 minutes. You'll look toward the northwest. We've got clear skies expected tonight, so pretty pleasant numbers, dropping down into the upper 40s into the mountains, so kind of cool there. Low to mid 50s, Roanoke, Lynchburg, Smith Mountain Lake, and also into Danville. Tomorrow, you'll notice the warm up begin. We've got mid and even some upper 80s across the Piedmont tomorrow afternoon. Roanoke Valley about 86, a little cooler through the NRV in the upper 70s from Whitfield to Reiner to Galax, 74 in Hot Springs and Covington, 81 degrees. And what we'll notice tomorrow is the humidity level starting to gradually bump back up, giving way to our warmest day of the week, which is going to be on Wednesday. And that's when this high pressure system moves off the coast. You get that tropical air that starts to move back in, complements with the southwest wind. And that's we're going to be warmer than Miami, Florida on Wednesday, getting up close to 91 degrees. Miami's going to be around 85 with some of that cool breeze going there. Now, as we look ahead, we'll also notice some more humidity coming back in. Dew points going back up into the 50s by tomorrow. That's kind of in the middle range, but by the time we get to Wednesday and Thursday, it's definitely going to be more muggy, so just plan for that to make a comeback. Also, the chance of showers and storms returns by the time we get into Thursday as well, and then Friday and Saturday we'll keep a chance of scattered storms. Also, highs back into the mid to upper 80s.
Many of the students who are graduating this week from William Fleming and Patrick Henry High Schools will be the first in their families to attend college, and it's a goal that they set several years ago. WDBJ7's Joe DeShiel has tonight's good news here at home.
Skylar Kyle walked across the stage at William Fleming High School for a cap and gown moment the COVID-19 shutdown had threatened to take away. He and his classmates will graduate during a virtual ceremony on Thursday.
I did really work hard for this, so I'm really happy about it.
5 years ago, Kyle was a 7th grader taking part in the Gear Up Virginia program, a state initiative with federal funding that encourages students to aim for college. This photo is from a trip to UVA. Today, more than 500 seniors at William Fleming and Patrick Henry high schools are part of the program, and more than 200 have plans to attend college, qualifying for a $5,000 scholarship.
I never really had anybody in my life that went to college, so I didn't know anything about college before they had showed up, and so it helped me get started. It helped the wheel start turning.
And you catch them the earlier the better, because that keeps them motivated, keep them interested in school.
Not just thinking about going to college, but actually giving them the resources that help them understand this is attainable for them.
Roanoke's Executive Director of School Counseling and Equity, Tasha Steele, and William Fleming Principal Archie Freeman say it's been a game changer. Kyle is preparing to attend VCU.
Well, I'm going to be majoring in theater and minoring in musical theater, and hopefully I can make a future out of that.
And these kids are going to do wonderful things, but they will be successful. They're going to be great.
In Roanoke, Joe DeShiel, WDBJ7.
All right, tonight in sports, the high school football season is drawing closer, and now some local high school coaches are coming together to make sure their voices are heard. That story and more next. As the season draws closer, high school football coaches across the state are banding together to make sure their voices are heard. Anthony Romano has more on a new organization.
Over the past month, high school football coaches throughout Virginia have organized a group known as the Commonwealth Football Coaches Association. Representing 5 regions in the state, the new alliance is intended to give coaches a unified voice on issues surrounding the sport. Heritage head coach Brad Bradley was one of the first to get involved.
We just feel like that it makes sense that if we're the ones on the front lines dealing with our kids and any situations or any rule changes, policy changes, or things like that, we think we at least deserve a place at the table to talk about it, give our opinions, give our input.
Since the group's first tweet just more than a week ago, the account has amassed more than 1,100 followers. Bradley says the last meeting for coaches in our region involved schools from Roanoke to Danville, as well as numerous Seminole and Dogwood district members.
I think that there's a lot of apprehension sometimes when things are getting started that, is this a group that's just trying to get power? Is this a group that's just trying to have the good old boy system? But that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to get every single coach involved and every single coach's input in everything we do.
As the specter of COVID-19 looms, Bradley says the alliance is not a direct response to the pandemic, but more about creating a platform for coaches going forward. The VHSL has already established an advisory committee of coaches for each sport to relay input as it relates to the virus.
Right now with the COVID, there's a lot of other things going on than just us. We have nothing to do with that part of it. The VHSL, the Football Advisory Committee, obviously, we're all, we hinge on every word that the governor says every time that he talks. We would love to get back with our kids safely, and we're all praying and hoping that happens soon. But, we have to take advice from a lot of other people before it gets to us.
Anthony Romano, WDBJ7.
Well, hope you enjoy the wonderful weather on this Monday. We've got another day of pleasant conditions tomorrow, but you are going to notice things starting to warm back up and a bit more stormy coming in very late in the week. And we're following a new tropical depression. It's tropical depression number 3. Has not gotten strong enough to get a name just yet, but it may over the next couple days, and we'll be following that closely. As you go through the rest of this evening, we're looking at some pleasant weather getting down into the 60s as we head towards sunset.
Right, gorgeous day out there. Thank you, Brent, and thank you for making WDBJ7 the region's most watched newscast. Good night.
Hey, Sam, Mike check. We're here at 5th and Federal where the police are starting to close the road. It will be closed momentarily. Nobody's.
Gene, a few more protesters have gathered here as they have made a trip through the River District down here to River Street.